thanks so much for taking time to hang with us today.
David, grateful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, tell us, what is the Greatness Foundation and why did you start it?
So the Greatness Foundation is a global community creating a better world. And the reason I started it actually is a weekend that changed my life about 7 years ago. And I was driving in a van coming back from Mexico, and I just started crying my eyes out. And what had happened over the 2 days leading up to that is we left on a Friday morning, 7 a.m. from San Diego. We went down to Mexico, this town called Maniadero, where families are living on dirt. They have pallets for walls and a tarp for a roof. And in 2.5 days, a group of us built a home for this family. And on Sunday, we dedicated the home. The family walked in for the first time. And I was having an experience, and it didn't really hit me until this drive home. And so I'm sitting in the van and I'm crying my eyes out, and I have this realization. I didn't know why I was so emotional, but I just knew that I needed to incorporate more of that in my life. It made me question everything. It made me question how I had spent my weekends in all the years leading up to that. It made me question of what I was spending my time doing, the kind of people I was spending my time with. And so I come back to San Diego after this experience, and I just start putting a message out and saying, hey, I am committed to doing another project like this. Who wants to come with me? And one by one, people started signing up. And fast forward 7 years, one person at a time, we've grown to a community of about 70,000 people. Who we've taken over 1,000 people down to Mexico with us. We started doing our own house builds. We do those every few months. And now this community has just grown from a desire to connect with people who are passionate about working on themselves, who are passionate about making a difference, who are passionate about creating things that matter. And that's really how the community has grown. We started as a community first, and then we built a bit of a business model around it and behind the community.
So this is 7 years ago, and you're driving back by yourself? Like, are people seeing you crying, or, you know what I mean? Take me into that moment. Are you having conversation with people, or are you alone?
I'm alone. I'm an INTJ, massive introvert. You too?
I'm an INTJ as well.
Oh, awesome. All right. That's why we connect so well. Yeah. So a lot of people see, now that we've built this community, and, it's interesting we're having this conversation because tomorrow morning we leave on another project down in Mexico. We're taking 60 people down with us. So people, I think, see me whether I'm speaking or an event or a weekend, and they think, oh my gosh, he must be an extrovert. And the reality is I recharge when I'm alone. I love just reading, thinking, having time to myself. And so I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was in a van. The director of our partner organization was driving, and I was right behind her, sitting in the van. And no, total introspection. I think I even had my headphones in, and I was looking out the window and just thinking about the weekend and going, again, those thoughts of, how do I want to spend my time? Who do I want to surround myself with? What kind of legacy and impact do I want to leave behind? So it was a very introspective process. And I still do that all the time, constantly, through yoga, through meditation, and always a bit of a reflective practice.
I had a super similar experience, but it was 2004 coming back from India. I had taken a team over to India to visit an organization and do things. And I wasn't the same. It literally just changed my life. It literally was also 2 weeks of trying to decompress from all that I had seen and done. And so I resonate with that. So how soon afterwards, I assume you were working in a job or something and you started rallying people. Help me, see the process of the Greatness Foundation coming to fruition.
Yeah, well, I think an important bit of a backstory is up until that point, I had checked a lot of the boxes. And what I mean by that is I had spent 5 years on active duty in the Marines. I joined the Marines directly out of high school. Right after I finished the Marines, I did my undergrad in kinesiology and psychology. And I had started my first business, which was a fitness company, because it's kind of what I knew. And my primary goal was revenue. I just knew I wanted to make an X amount, and in order to support my son and living here in San Diego. And I hit that goal. I'm one of those people, like, if I set a goal, I'm just going to do it. yes, it was nice making a difference and helping people through the company, but really it was revenue driven. So up until this point, check. I've kind of done it. I have this successful business. I have these things in life, and yet this emotional experience is happening because I need more of that in my life. So what I ended up doing is selling that business to the first person I hired. It gave me a little bit of a runway. And I started to think about, well, how do I now incorporate more of that? How do I start to blend? And this is why I'm really passionate about entrepreneurship. How do I start to blend this idea of making a difference and making an impact while at the same time generating revenue and making an income doing it? And so that's the world I've really fallen in love with, is where those two things meet, of income and impact. So it's been certainly a gradual journey. As soon as I got back from Mexico, to answer your question directly, I put the message out that day, and 3 months later, I took my first group down to Mexico. And to be honest, one of the things that surprised me, David, is, and I kind of had to get used to it and not take it personally anymore. A lot of people say, yeah, sign me up next, me, and people are raising their hand. Less than 10% of the people that actually say they're going to do it actually come. Just like you went on this India trip. I don't know how many people told you, yeah, I'm going to do it, and compared to how many actually did. So we still deal with that, of course. But what I realized is I just wanted to surround myself with people. I wanted to create a community of people who are actually going to do it, not just raise their hand and say, next time, one day, but actually making it happen. So 3 months later, we went down. I didn't even have enough people signed up, so I had to fund the rest of it myself. And then, of course, the thoughts come up of, is this sustainable? Can I keep doing this? But I just said, you know what? I'm committed to this. I know this is my path. This is what I'm meant to do. And then after about the second or third one, now all of a sudden we gain momentum, where at this point now in 2019, we're filling these things up months in advance.
And the cost of the person signing up for this, I assume it's like a 2.5, 3-day trip, is X amount, and part of that amount is funding the home itself. Is that how it works?
Yeah, the way we do it is we do a $333 donation to come join us for the weekend. That includes all the construction materials. It includes transportation down, accommodation, meals, everything. And we always offer scholarship spot. That's something that's really important to me, because if I don't ever want finances to be an obstacle. That's actually not just for our nonprofit trips, but any of our programs. If someone emails us and tells us, hey, I'm going through this big financial hurdle, and this is an obstacle in front of me, and we find that to be the case, we always offer scholarship spots. So for instance, this weekend, out of the 60 people that are coming with us, roughly 10%, about 6 of them come on scholarship spots. So at this point now, we have donors and we have a fund set aside where we can provide people those scholarship spots.
Mm-hmm. Do you make those people work like extra hard or anything? I'm kidding.
What's funny is naturally, it's naturally, I find that the people that have that feel like they're limited in their finances end up actually working. Like they seem to be the most passionate. I think back to this, like the people who go through the most adversity are the strongest ones. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you start building this community of people that initially is around building homes in Mexico. Did you start doing other things to get those people connected to one another, or pour into them in some way?
We did. The natural thought was, well, we're doing these every few months. How do we continue to keep everyone engaged? How do we create more opportunities for them to connect? So we started doing in-person events. We do these things called greatness gatherings, where people get to come together locally. We have some business partners, Kurt Walker out in Las Vegas and Levi out in Utah, where they're creating these communities in those areas. And we'll kind of build up little chapters. And these are free gatherings, opportunities for people to come together and connect with like-minded people who are also passionate about making a difference. So not only did we start to create free local community events, but then we started branching out and working with other impact partners in different parts of the world. So we actually also did a trip to Vietnam and Cambodia, a trip to India, to Nicaragua. We supported with opening a vocational school there. 2 hours north of Managua, a town called Hikaleo. And then we did our first trip to Kenya last year, and we're working on a children's home there. So we just started branching out as I think we started to develop more of a name for ourselves. We would have potential partner organizations reach out to us and ask if we were interested in working with them. So that's kind of the progression of what we've been able to build.
And how much of the stickiness of the organization are those trips versus the local gatherings versus some sort of online connection? Where's the sticky factor?
I would say it's a blend between the local in-person gatherings and the house builds that we do. The house builds seem to be this anchor that people and the fact that they're full months and months in advance, people get really, really excited for them. And what's great, what I love seeing is the kind of community that's built beyond just us, right? The relationships that exist. We had our first house build marriage last year, where two people that met on a house build got married. We've had business partnerships for them. We've had all kinds of really cool things happen. I mean, it's just natural, right? If you bring a lot of people who share the same values of wanting to make a difference and give back, you bring them together in a container like a weekend where you're serving. And not only do we build the homes, but we feed 150 families. We visit kids in an orphanage. We spend the afternoon with them. We pick up donations and drop them off for migrant families and communities there. So it's a very impactful weekend that you can imagine. You bring all those people together. So, the community extends beyond just us, and we really are doing our best. And I like that you're asking these questions, because our focus, for 2019 is how do we create even more community? How do we create more events, whether offline or online, for our community to come and circle around?
And how much of the programming when you're in Mexico or on these other trips is personal development related versus serving in the community related?
90-10 serving, 10 personal development. I sprinkle it in. And the reason I do that is I don't ever want it to be off-putting. I know the transformation that happens just by being part of the experience. And for instance, David, you'll have to join us, but when you or someone that's joining us comes down on Friday night, we do I lead this a little bit of a facilitated discussion, and we talk about purpose and passion and what we're here to do. And I have the feedback, again, this is 6.5, 7 years later, people are telling me that one conversation that I started sparked them on this journey of following their purpose. Because I'm a big believer in the quality of our life depends upon the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves. And so I simply ask the questions. We provide it in a container where people feel safe to share. And whether it's something they do right away, that trip, or immediately after, or maybe it's 6 months or a year down the road, but the question, the seed is planted of, oh yeah, what is my purpose? What do I want to do in this lifetime that I'm blessed and grateful to have? So it's about 90-10 service to personal development. And then on the flip side, as far as the programs we offer, once they're part of our community, those then would be probably flipped the other way. 90% of the personal and business development, and then 10% service. We tie service into everything we do, though.
And so those services, I don't want to use it. We're using the word services now 2 different ways, but the things that you're offering them once they get connected, are those ways that you're funding the organization? Is that how this is getting funded?
Yeah, we have 2 arms to what we do. We have the nonprofit and we have the revenue generating side. So the nonprofit is funded by private, both individual and corporate sponsors. So for instance, there's a great company in San Diego, Organifi. My friend Drew Canoli started an amazing company. They sponsored the last house build that we did, the second one. So now instead of building one home, I forgot to mention this to you, that instead we used to build one home at a time. Now we build 2 every time, because we have this abundance of sponsors and both individual and corporate dollars coming through. So the nonprofit is solely funded by individual and corporate sponsors that come in. And of course, we funnel some of our proceeds from the revenue generating side over to the nonprofit as well. Now, the revenue generating side, the way that we make money doing that is through our masterminds and our retreats.
Okay. All right. And that you're saying is 90+% personal development and business development.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And so when did you start doing those types of events? You talked about, all right, you started doing the service projects in Mexico, that you started getting people connected. When did you go, oh, now would be a good opportunity to offer a mastermind or some sort of retreat? How did that come about?
Yeah, the retreats we've been running for a while. What I did is, and this is, I think, an important question to ask ourselves constantly, is what do we really want? Right? What are we passionate about? What do we feel like is ours that's here to do? And I've always been passionate about travel. Last year, for instance, I was gone 7 months out of the year, not because I had to be, because I wanted to be with the kind of projects and everything that we were doing.
Handstands.
Handstands everywhere. Handstands
Handstands around the world.
That's
Come
right.
on. If people don't, I don't even know if you're posting. Are you still posting out on Instagram? Because I found them on Tumblr everywhere.
Oh yeah. They'll have to check out Instagram. In fact, I just came back from Australia a week ago, and I have a really cool one in front of the Opera House that I'm going to post here soon.
How many handstands have you done, you think, in your entire life?
Oh man, that's a tough, including yoga classes.
Thousands.
We're in the thousands. We're in the thousands.
All right, keep going. My apologies. So travel is a passion for you.
Yeah. So I've always been passionate about travel. I've been passionate about personal development. And so the retreats I've been running for about the same 6 years. We did these trips to Mexico. And then in the times that we weren't doing them, I would take people to places like Bali, which is one of my favorite places in the world, Colombia, Nicaragua. We now tie in personal development with the service work on these retreats. And then about 2 years ago is when we started building out more of the programs and the mastermind. And specifically, our flagship program is called Passion to Profit, and we help people we call it start a business that matters. So it's literally taking their passions and creating profit from it. So income and impact at the same time. So we walk them through step by step, the ideation process, kind of it's a Silicon Valley approach. I mean, like lean startup approach to starting a business from the ground up, going zero to launch. So that we've been doing for about 2 years now.
Great. That's great. All right, let's go back to now that I've interrogated you on how you've started this thing, because it's very fascinating. And one of the reasons why I ask you all these questions, it's fascinating for our listeners is, as I mentioned before we started recording, I started churches. And basically, you have started a church minus Jesus. You know what I mean? It's a community of people who are wanting to make a difference in the world, who are bringing this sense of love and purpose and beauty. And I'm just so impressed. So fun to hear what you're doing. That's amazing. So this idea, you chose the word greatness, I assume for a reason, way back 6-7 years ago. What does that word mean to you? Why is that so important to you?
Well, as I mentioned, I studied psychology, and one of the people you learn about early in psychology is a guy named Abraham Maslow, who talks about the hierarchy of needs. Most people are familiar with this idea of, if you can imagine a triangle or pyramid, at the very bottom are basic needs, food, energy, water, shelter. Then you can start to move your way up, education, things like this. And at the very top, the peak of this pyramid or triangle is what he calls self-actualization. And he goes on to say that not only is there this desire, but he said there's a need for self-actualization, a need. He says, what one can be, one must be. And that has always resonated very deeply with me, because it's this idea of, a poet must make poetry, an artist must paint, a musician must make music. Like, we must do what we're here to do. And so to me, greatness is actually getting clear on what we're here to do and then doing that thing. Not doing not doing what is someone else's to do, whether it's our parents or whether it's someone we respect and admire or who we think, there's so many constructs and social constructs for us to try to follow and these narratives to play into. And yet, if we just get quiet enough and really honestly ask ourselves, like, who am I meant to be? Like, what am I here to do? And then passionately pursuing that. I mean, like, relentlessly, unapologetically going after that. That to me is greatness, like on a daily basis. And it just aligns, most people are familiar with Tony Robbins. He has, out of everything he shares, I think the most profound thing is 3 words. He says, progress equals happiness. And what I love about that, it's progress in the areas that's most meaningful to you. So just like I shared, greatness to me is making progress in the area that's meaningful to us, in the pursuit of actualizing our potential. That to me is greatness.
Mm-hmm. And for everybody, there are so many different things that are meaningful to them. I mean, whether it's their family relationships or their physical bodies or making a difference in the world or even generating income. You know what I mean? Everybody's kind of got that different. Do you see that as you're working with people, that purpose or passion shifts over the course of their life? Does it shift through different seasons, or do you see it more staying the same?
Always changing. It's something I'm constantly checking in with on my own. This is just, even with everything that we're doing at Greatness Foundation now, this is my purpose right now. And I have to be honest enough with myself that if that changes at some point, to follow that. And I love how you mentioned that everyone has a very unique one. And it's not about sometimes going out and changing the world. Because I'll give you a perfect example. My mom, like, who I love and respect, and I think is the most amazing mom in the world. Most of us feel that way about our parents. Her world is, they have land up in Northern California, and she takes care of the plants, the trees and the fruits and the vegetables and the animals. And then she has chickens, horses, goats, that thing. And she wakes up and she takes care of the animals, and she takes care of the plants, and she takes care of the land with so much love that you can feel how alive she is doing that. That's all she wants to do. And so that is her purpose. That's what she's feels like she's here to do. And so it doesn't matter whether it's taking care of the land or being a teacher or running a foundation or creating a podcast, like whatever that thing is, we just need to passionately pursue it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Putting everything into it. How do you deal with people who go, man, I got bills to pay, and I'm in a job where it is not passionate. Like, it's paying the bills, but I'm dying here. And I'm stuck. I've got a mortgage. I've got 2 car payments. I've got kids in college. But, how do you deal with people in those situations?
Yeah. I would say most people that I speak to are in that kind of situation. And I would say, first of all, in fact, just this morning spoke with someone who said that exact thing of, I'm passionate about these things, but look, I've got a mortgage and I've got these payments and I've got to take care of this. And by all means, take care of them. The first thing, in my opinion, that needs to happen is first a gratitude for that feeling. That something feels off. I call it a divine discomfort. It's a mismatch between where we are in this moment and what we know we're capable of. So the fact that feeling exists of you're capable of more, the fact that you're slightly discontent, great, because growth wouldn't happen. If you were totally content in, okay, well, I've got these bills to pay and I'm just going to do this thing, then you don't ever grow. You just stay in what you're doing for the rest of your life. So number one is be grateful for it. And number two, understand that it does not happen overnight, right? So it's not about leaving all of that and jumping into this other thing. Some people have the luxury of being able to do that, whether they have savings or they have a stability, some kind of net to catch them. Most people don't. And so it's this gradual transition. I mean, for me, to transition from what I was doing, I shared the first business I started was all revenue driven, to now what I'm creating is this blend of impact and income. It's been a gradual process. It's, went from 99% one thing, 1% the other, to 90-10, 80-20, 70-30. So it just slowly started to make the shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It's so hard for people. I think even the weekend house builds, it seems like, are a great stepping stone too, for people to get a taste of, maybe obviously building a house in Mexico may not be their passion, but they get to be around other people that have those similar desires. And they don't have to go leave their job to do that. They can spend a weekend with you and have this transformational experience and allow their minds to expand a bit. Do you find that people are finding their passions and purposes in Mexico?
Oh yeah. And like you said, I talk about this when we do our conversation on Friday, that it's not about building homes. It's not about even doing projects with the Greatness Foundation. It's about having an experience that transforms you, that wakens something inside of you, inspires you to go out and create what's yours to create. And we're busy. We have responsibilities, we have commitments, but at the very least, everyone can do something. So even if it's, if let's say people can't give up 2.5 days to come on a trip to Mexico, you can give up an hour to go to a local, convalescent home. You can give up an hour to volunteer your time a month, or you can't do an hour a month. You can do an hour every quarter. Do something that puts you in that world, that gives you that experience, that surrounds you with those kinds of people and in those kinds of conversations. Because Marcus Aurelius is one of my favorite people in history, famous Roman philosopher and emperor. And he has so many powerful quotes, but one of them that's always stuck with me is, he says, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And for me, I'm always like, what am I thinking about? What kinds of things am I marinating my mind in? And so just by putting yourself in environments where you're thinking about impact and contribution or whatever's important to you more, just that alone changes your soul. Your soul changes colors based on the types of things you're putting in your mind.
Hmm. I see younger people, let's just say teens and 20s, that maybe have this innate passion to make a difference in the world. And then I see people that are late 40s, 50s, 60s who have some sort of painful encounter in life that seem to have a shift to think about the world, in a broader perspective. That's my experience. And I think we all have different painful encounters at different ages, but midlife, there's something like, oh, I've checked all the boxes. Like I've done all the things that I'm supposed to. I've had the family or whatever. Are you finding that, kind of those two age categories, or do you find it just across all ages? You know what I mean? Help me see what you're seeing in these thousands of people that you're interfacing with.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is I love how you address the younger population, because our focus for 2019, actually on the nonprofit side, is actually to bring this kind of education, mindfulness, purpose, entrepreneurship to high schools. We already have verbal commitments. This is a very new program. We're calling it the Do Great Things Project. And everything we're teaching and have been teaching to adults. And for instance, the experience of the weekend in Mexico, the kinds of things we talk about, that they may not be able to come with us. Some of them do, but we're teaching that to them at the high school level. It's the kind of classes I know I wish I had. And everyone that we talk to about this program goes, oh my gosh, I wish I had that class. Asking the questions about purpose, mindfulness, entrepreneurship. So yes to that. That I think it's a more broad conversation. It's a more of a mainstream conversation that's happening now. And this is why I love formats like this: podcasts, videos, content, books, Netflix documentaries. We have so many resources to access, and more people are talking about it. What I love is people who have platforms, right? These celebrities and music and actors and actresses, and people are talking about it more. And so just by starting the conversation, more people are starting to think about it. And then to your second point, there is unfortunately a bit of the older population that's very rigid in their thinking. They may have been jaded. They've almost been hardened by the world in some way. Maybe they tried pursuing their passion at one point and it didn't work out, and they go, well, it's not meant to be. But here's the unfortunate reality, David. And this is, if there's a take-home message for this entire conversation, it's this. Dr. Bronnie Ware studied patients in the last 8 weeks of life. Australian palliative care nurse. I've given many talks on stages about this particular topic. Studied hundreds of patients in their last 8 weeks of life. And she asked them, what are your biggest regrets? And the number one regret of the dying, people that are on their deathbed, where a tremendous amount of clarity and wisdom and truth comes from, the number one regret was, I'd wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So sometimes is an older population a little bit hardened and jaded? Yes. But guess what? Unfortunately, they're ending up on their deathbed wishing they'd had the courage to live a life true to themselves. So I'm not waiting until my deathbed to wish that I had lived a life different. I'm doing it right now. And I'm hopefully, through what we're creating at the Greatness Foundation and having conversations like this, hopefully showing other people, hey, do not wait until your deathbed, because that would be the worst feeling in the world, is to be there thinking and wishing you had done something different. So yeah. I'm going to pursue it now. It doesn't matter how many times I fall down. I'm following this journey that's mine to follow.
I love it. I love it. Both of our kids, my kids are 19 and 16 now, but they've both been to India and served in remote villages. They've been to Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Mexico, just because we wanted them to be exposed to another way of living other than Orange County, California. We wanted them to be exposed to the challenges of the world and how they can make a difference in not just there, but around the globe, expand their thinking. Kids I find want that. Like they're ready for it. They're excited about those opportunities. So I think you'll have huge success in the high schools that you go into.
Thanks, David. You and we're like the same person. My son is 14, and he's been on every single house build we've done every 3 months for the last 7 years. And he's come same thing, Vietnam, Cambodia, Nicaragua. I mean, and we never know that, just like with adults, we don't know the impact it's going to have. We just know that it's planting a seed. And so however it shows up in his life, I just know he's going to be a better human being for having those experiences. Because you live in Orange County, I live in San Diego. We live these really blessed lives that it's not even the 1%. It's like the 1% of the 1% of people that get to experience life like this. And I believe it's not ours to take for granted. I believe we are blessed with these resources in order to share them with others. Like, this is not for me to hold on to and say, oh, it's just mine. No, like I have a platform. I have a podcast. We have a community. Oh, I'm going to put that to use. I'm going to put it to work and share a message.
All right. So if people live, well, I guess they could go to Mexico with you no matter where they live. They could fly into San Diego and go with you. I mean,
out of the 60 people, about 10 of them are flying in, 2 or 3 are flying internationally. And yeah, people all the time.
Out of control. All right. So what's the best way for people to get in contact with you? And obviously we'll put all your websites and social media and everything in the show notes, but what would be the best next step for them?
Well, if they're interested in anything we're doing at Greatness Foundation, if you just Google Greatness Foundation or go to greatness.ngo or thegreatnessfoundation.com, any of those are great. I post a lot of stories on my personal Instagram. And so it's just Mike Sherbakov. And I don't do that many posts, but as far as the stories go, I like to share. I mean, even this weekend, I'll probably have full stories. So I like that story feature because people get to just follow along on what's happening real time. So that's exciting. That's probably the best way. They can always contact me through the website as well.
And what's amazing is for $333, you're basically getting to help build a house for somebody who desperately needs one and a transformational life experience. That is like nothing. That's pennies. Like, that's awesome.
Thanks, David. And again, it can also be free. Like, if someone that's listening or watching says, oh my gosh, I really want to go, finances are an obstacle, email me and you're coming for free. Like, that will make that happen. So, it's just, there's really nothing stopping anyone from an experience like this or anything other than them saying one day. And my question is, are you going to keep saying one day or are you going to make it day one?
I love it. Mike, thank you so much. I love what you guys are doing. I'm inspired. I want to learn more. So I'm going to keep, picking your brain, and we'll definitely point people toward the Mexico trip is a great first step.
Amazing. Thanks so much, David. Appreciate your time.